Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Holly Hester Reilly. Holly is the founder and CEO of H2R Product Science, a product management coaching and consulting firm that teaches the science of high-growth product development, and the host of the Product Science podcast. Holly is a former Columbia University research scientist and has led over a dozen successful digital product initiatives at startups, high-growth companies, and enterprises like MediaMath, Shutterstock, the Lean Startup Company, Unilever, Capital One, and Weight Watchers. Holly also teaches public and private workshops and has spoken about building high-growth products for events such as Lean Startup Summit Europe, Product Tank NYC, Parsons School of Design, and the Product School. Please join me in welcoming Holly Hester Reilly from her home office in New York City. Welcome, Holly.
Thanks, Tammy. I'm so excited to be here.
I am really happy to have you here. So, Holly, work from the inside out, we talk all about the kinds of different changes and transitions and moves that people have made in their careers to find more meaning and purpose and fulfillment in their lives. And I know that you've made a number of different moves in your career. Take us back to some of the earlier years, maybe even childhood. What did you dream about being or becoming? And if you want to, and tell us where things began and how they got to where they are today.
Sure. Thanks, Tammy. I certainly did have a lot of course changes to get to where I am today, but I'm really happy with where I am now in a way that I don't know that I would have expected. So when I will go back to childhood because one of the things that's been a part of my life for a long time is coaching. When I was young, I was a competitive figure skater. And this was in the 90s, in the height of figure skating popularity. And I was growing up in Massachusetts, and, there's a lot of ice skating in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And I just fell in love with the sport, and I got very serious very quickly, to the point where within maybe a year of beginning the sport, I was already skating 6 days a week.
Wow.
And by the time I was a teenager, I was coaching skating, coaching learn to skate and group lessons while I was getting private lessons myself from some really great coaches. And I always loved just sharing the basics, like just teaching kids and, sharing my love of the sport with people. That obviously didn't last forever. So retired from competitive figure skating at the ripe old age of 17. And at that point, I knew I wanted to do something in math or science. I, at that point, sort of dreamed of making an impact on the world by helping create great ways to manufacture drugs and do things like that, like do science research. I went to Columbia and I studied chemical engineering, which I picked because I really enjoyed how challenging it was. And I thought that, they always said engineering is where you take the science and you apply it to, make a good impact on the world. And that was really appealing to me. Mm-hmm. So I studied that, got involved in the research, doing scientific research in the labs. And loved doing the research. Started grad school, and I'm going to tell you something I don't always talk about, which is I failed out of grad school.
What?
Yeah. So I was in the MS Ph.D. program. So you get accepted into that right out of undergrad, and you're supposed to get your master's along the way to getting your Ph.D.
Right.
But you have to take this big exam, the PhD qualifying exam. And I surprisingly, I was at the same school. I went into the PhD program at Columbia. So I was at the same school I'd been at this whole time, taught by the same people. I get to the qualifying exam and I cannot pass it. They made the whole thing closed book, and all of the courses that we'd had, everything, all the tests were open book, because chemical engineering is like so hard that even open book,
Right.
it's really, really hard.
Right.
And the first time I took it, I got close to passing, but not quite. And they told me, we think that you can do it. You can stay for another year and try again.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And that was apparently, not everybody who had failed was even allowed to stay for another year and try.
Did you have the master's already at that point, or
No,
how did that work?
You take the PhD qualifying exam in the spring of your first year of the program.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't have the master's yet. The master's takes about 3 semesters. So, so I, got to finish. People got to finish the master's even if they failed the PhD.
I see.
But I got to finish it too because I was staying for another year to try again. And the second time I went into the classroom to take the test, the second year later, now I have my master's, and I just blanked. Like I could barely answer anything. I just was like, just kind of freaked out. Later, I've learned that that was probably a panic attack. But I was not at the time, didn't have the words for it, and they didn't have systems for that. Columbia doesn't exactly have a program to be like, so if you have panic attacks, this is how we're going to help you get through our PhD.
Right. Wow.
So they asked me they told me that I couldn't stay. And then began my sort of next path, my next search of like, well, what do I do then?
Yeah. Was that must have been was that devastating?
Yes, it was. It was very devastating. I felt like a failure, which I wasn't used to feeling like.
Yeah.
And I felt really angry because I was a very good researcher. I'd already published an article. And most of my peers, I don't think any of my peers had published an article yet.
Wow.
But that all didn't matter. And that was very, very difficult.
Mm.
Also, the year was 2008. So then the economy crashed.
Ouch.
Yeah. So then I was like, how am I going to get a job now? Who's getting jobs now? So I actually spent that fall teaching chemistry lab at a local university and teaching figure skating at the rink in Central Park.
Oh,
and
wow.
Just sort of like took some time trying to be like, well, what do I do next?
Wow.
What is my life now?
Wow.
So yeah, at that point, I guess I'm early 20s and maybe mid 20s by then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wasn't going to be a chemical engineering professor, and I wasn't going to have a PhD in it. And I had to figure out, well, do I want to go work as a chemical engineer, or do I want to do something else? And the first thing that I found, because it was a recession, so I ended up saying, whatever I can get a job in, I'll try. So I remember I was looking at the same time. My husband at the time had founded a startup, and I started getting involved in that. And so I was started going out in the New York City tech scene, the New York City startup scene, which in 2007 and 2008, because he founded it in 2007, was a very different place from what it is today. Much smaller and younger, more full of the sort of the rebels, I like to say. Like I like to, before the crash, before a lot of finance people ended up getting into tech, and before a lot of today's tech companies became the leaders that they are, it was a little bit more of a rebel thing to do, to be in a tech startup instead of going to Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I loved that energy, so I tried to move into that. But I said, whatever I can get a job in first is what I'll do. So I looked at the same time at jobs in startups and jobs in environmental engineering, because those actually exist in New York City.
Mm.
And the first job I got was environmental engineering. So
you were able to translate the chemical engineering into environmental engineering.
yes. Yeah. The translation for that is not too hard. Environmental's in many ways like a subset of chemical.
I see.
So that was doable. I did that for about 20 months and I hated it.
Wow.
Hated it with a passion. Of all the points in my life, that was the point where I was the least happy with my career. I had a full-on quarter life crisis. I would like wake up and cry and like go to the office and be like, what am I doing here? I hate this job.
Wow. What do you think you hated about it? What was it that had that such a sounds like such a visceral reaction?
It was I don't know how much of this has to do with that job versus just any job, but it was my first job outside of the ivory tower,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
And I missed the ivory tower. I missed being surrounded by smart, engaged, intellectual people who wanted to talk about how they were trying to make things better in the world.
Mm.
And that's not what I found. In my job was in the New York City government. And I was super excited about it because we were helping to clean up polluted land.
Mm.
And I thought, this is going to be great. Everyone's going to be excited about cleaning up the pollution and making the city safer for people. But that wasn't the energy that I found.
So it was a municipal government position.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't say that disparagingly, but I think that what you're pointing to some degree might be the work might have sounded interesting, but maybe the organizational culture it certainly wasn't a startup culture, let's say.
Yes,
If you were
exactly.
attracted, right? A lot of people, when I find that a lot of people are happy at their jobs, it's often the first thing they'll talk about is the culture in which they're working. They might talk about the work, but it's usually the context of the culture that really floats their boat. And I could imagine that, having worked in city government myself, that there are things about the culture of a kind of a bureaucratic environment that could really put a damper on your creativity if you're accustomed to being in an environment where you get a chance to do some thinking, and maybe an environment where you get to ask questions.
Yeah.
And try to answer those questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could imagine in an academic environment or in a research environment, you get to do that. Perhaps that wasn't so much the case where you were.
Yeah, it wasn't, and it very much was a culture problem for me. I felt like a fish out of water when I would walk into that office.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound disparaging about the people there. I mean, there were
No.
a lot of great people. Like,
Yeah.
they did great work. The
Yeah.
work was important. They would actually get recognition for being fast moving for a government office.
Yeah.
There were a lot of positive things about it, but it just wasn't the right place for me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't thrive there.
Yeah.
So,
well, you gave it your best. I mean, 20 months, is a decent amount of time to really give something your best shot.
Yeah, I did. I gave it a try. I even tried it towards the end, like starting a blog about learning some of the specifics of environmental pollution cleanup, and to try to, engage myself with the content more.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it just wasn't what made me excited to get up in the morning.
Yeah. So it sounds like at some point you started looking for something else.
Yes. I basically started looking for a job in tech. By that point in time, the startup that I had been involved in had been going for a while, and I'd gotten new experiences from it that I really enjoyed. I'd been doing them like nights and weekends, on the side. We had exhibited at the convention and gotten a lot of positive feedback from all of the users who tried it out there. And I just found that I loved that world so much more. And when I would go out to events in the tech community, the energy was the right kind of energy, and the
Mm,
culture was the right kind of culture for me.
yeah.
So I started looking for a job in tech, and I think because this was my first move into tech, and I didn't have a computer science degree or a computer engineering degree. I did have an engineering degree, which definitely helped, but
Yeah.
chemical instead of computer. I want to say it took me like 8 months or something to find one.
Mm-hmm.
I had some interviews and I got close, but I didn't actually get offered a job at a tech company for a while. And then I found one, and it was a very small one. I was the fourth employee,
Oh, wow.
and that began my journey in tech.
Wow. So when you say tech, can you tell me in a little more detail what that means? Even though I'm not a tech person, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
curious for our listeners to understand what that means to have gotten engaged with tech. What kinds of things, if you can say it in
Yeah.
layperson's terms?
Yeah. So when I talk about tech or the tech industry, I mean software,
Okay.
often websites and web experiences, or mobile experiences. All of my time has been in web platforms.
Mhm.
As so much software is these days, it's all
Yeah.
cloud, all runs in the cloud and is web based. So, what I mean is that I would work at a company where they see technology as a core differentiator for them. So, they might be doing something that other companies do without seeing technology as a core differentiator.
Okay.
For example, one of the companies that I really grew a lot at was an advertising technology company. We
Oh.
call it ad tech for short.
Mhm.
And that company is Media Math. And when I was there, I learned a lot about the advertising industry. And I could say I worked in advertising, but I say I worked in ad tech because I was working. We were developing a new category in technology for advertising, and the ways that we worked were the way that people work in the tech industry, very much the Silicon Valley kind of way of working.
Mm.
They sent us to Silicon Valley for training. Um, and we applied that day in and day out in our jobs.
So when you was that job where you were the fourth employee? Was that
No, it was the
no.
next job.
Oh, so Media Math was the next job. So
Mm-hmm.
when you were getting all this sort of on the ground learning in tech,
Mm-hmm.
was this a completely new area for you as compared to your training in chemical engineering, or was there some transferable, and I'm sounding very pedestrian here, but transferable skill? Were there transferable
Yeah.
skills from your experience in chemical engineering? I mean, I know that you had to
Mm-hmm.
use a lot of software in that as well, but I'm curious,
Yes.
was there carryover? Yeah.
There were
Okay.
absolutely. The one of the things that I like to describe to people these days is that chemical engineering, there's two major kinds of chemical engineering. There's
Okay.
product engineering and there's process engineering.
Ah,
When
okay.
you think about product engineering in the space of chemical engineering, that is the people who are in R&D labs coming up with the new formula.
Right.
There's a new longer lasting lipstick, or the new formulation for how a drug is going to
Right.
be delivered.
Right. Right. And that was sort of your initial interest in heading in that direction, right?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
had always been interested in that part of it.
Yeah.
Then there's also process engineering, and
Right.
process engineering is designing the plant that manufactures the thing, or designing the petroleum refinery plant. And in getting a degree in chemical engineering, I studied both of those things.
Okay.
Turns out software engineering is a combination of product engineering and process engineering. It's just that instead of dealing with atoms and molecules, you're dealing with code.
Okay. Got it. I actually
So
understand what you're saying.
awesome.
At least I think I do.
I bet, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. So that turned out to my advantage. I did a lot of reading on software and the software industry, a lot of talking to people I knew who worked in software. And was able to ramp up pretty quickly to the point where I went into this company as the fourth person, and I was able to really drive a change for them, where I said, you're paying this huge licensing fee to use this software from a third-party platform, that we could do something smarter and better if we do it ourselves and cheaper. And ended up making a pitch for them to build their own internal platform, which I then product managed, which is what I do now. I do product management. So I led the discovery of what was needed, as well as the plans for how to deliver on that. And we built out that platform client by client, meaning the first version was for one client that they already had. Then we added some things to it to make the next client able to use it, added some things to make the next client able to use it. And by the time I left, which was, I want to say, a year and a half to 2 years later, the company had grown to 10 people, and they had all these clients on this platform that I had helped them conceptualize in the first place. So that was, on the one hand, a phenomenal experience from a product perspective, getting to design and build this platform. On the other hand, an awful experience from a culture perspective. I was the only woman in the office. It was a privately owned company owned by two men. And they had, they brought in male interns, and like it was like locker room talk, and didn't feel like a great place to be.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. So I've been through some things,
Yeah. So then you went to Media Math from there.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I used that experience to get onto something better. And I went into Media Math, and the time that I joined Media Math, they were about 140 people, and they were venture backed. They were successful. They had just been named number one in a I can't quite remember if it was Gartner or Forrester, but one of the industry analysts had just named them number one in their category, which is a demand side platform for ad tech, which is the ad tech way of saying they make software for marketers,
right?
Not for the people who sell the space.
Yeah.
So, and I got in the door there was one of the first. I think at the time I joined the team, there were maybe 6 product managers. I got in as a product manager, and then I got to do I just really had an incredible opportunity to do work there the way that the best way to do product management work, which is to spend all of your time with your customer.
So I'm curious from a sort of career trajectory or job seeking perspective for a moment. So that was probably, give or take, about maybe 10 years ago or so.
Yep.
And so I'm just wondering, so here you are, you've got all these degrees and credentials in chemical engineering. I'm looking at it on a very superficial level. I understand, though, what you've described to me as the sort of breakdown of product engineering, process engineering, and how that might translate to someone working in software and coding and things like that. Pretty good, huh?
Yes.
And so here you go. You decide you're leaving this other startup, very male dominated. You've clearly made your mark there, however, and brought a lot to them. And you go over to Media Math. Did you have a foot in the door there in any way? Was it a networking opportunity that you found your way there? How did you know to go to Media Math? Did you just apply for a job that you saw online? Were you introduced? I'm asking this because, we know that networking is a big part of making different career moves, but especially when I could see where on paper or on your resume, someone's still going to be focusing on that chemical engineering degree.
Yeah.
And might be saying, well, how is she a product manager in software?
Yep. Yep.
I could see where someone might, unless they were directly introduced to you in some way, how do you really start to, I guess, rebrand yourself as a job candidate at that point?
Yeah. So it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
Networking was absolutely a part of it. I think, yeah, the both that first job in tech at the 4-person company, as well as working at Media Math, I had a network connection that alerted me to the opportunity and like
Okay.
told somebody to look at my resume.
Okay.
That said, that probably wouldn't have been successful if I hadn't done so much to make my resume tell a story about how I can do software product management.
Okay. You did.
These
Great. Yeah.
I did, yeah. These days, I coach a lot of people on how to get into product management,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge fan of going through all the things you've done and saying, what about this tells a story about how I can do this new job I'm trying to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So I was able to, between the startup that I'd been a part of with um, my then husband and the startup that I joined after,
Right.
both of those. Also, even I did software work when I worked for the city government because I was so passionate about it. I ended up being the webmaster and I ended up being involved
Oh,
in
that's
the
right.
software projects
Yeah.
that was happening.
Right.
And
Right.
so I took all of those experiences and said, here's my background. Here's why I
Right.
should do this.
Right. Right. And I think you bring up a really good point too about how do you tell the story of who you are as a professional and not just here's the bucket of skills that I bring along with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I love what you said about the story that you tell about yourself. So, so from Media Math, did you? How long did you stay at Media Math?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And and then when did you go? I know you went out on your own at some point. When
Yes.
was that?
Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet. Yeah. So I was at Media Math for 3 years. Huge growth period. When I joined Media Math, I had 140 people. When I left 3 years later, they had over 900 employees.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's your classic, tech startup hyper growth um, experience, which I'm super fortunate to have had. And in the time that I was there, I got to really have a big impact on the product management and user research at the organization. I also had my first kid while I was
Oh,
there,
wow. Wow. So you
and
had a
that
lot
sort
of
of
accomplishments.
yeah. I mean, I don't say it to say I was accomplished. I say it to say that it affected what I wanted out of work. And I am very much a person who wants to live my values. And while I am confident that my children would be able to live a happy and successful life, whether or not their mom is around a lot, or
Mhm.
their mom is working full time, I just didn't want that life. I wanted to work less and be with my kids more, but still have a career.
Mhm.
And I was very fortunate that I was able to negotiate that when I was at Media Math.
Ah,
So the first year of my daughter's life, I actually worked part time. And, initially I didn't know how that was going to go. I don't think they knew either. They didn't have anybody who'd done it before. I was the first
yeah.
person to be like, hey, I'm having a kid. I don't want to be here all the time, but can I still have this job?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
But I had done such a good job for the company that it was very easy for my boss to say yes to that.
Wow. Great.
So I did that. And what I did was I went and I made a big list of all the things that I did, all of my responsibilities. And then I categorized them by things that I could do if I wasn't in the office full time and things that I couldn't do if I was not in the office full time.
Mhm.
And then I said, here's the responsibilities I would want to keep. Here's the responsibilities I would want to give to somebody else. And my boss let me hire somebody to work under me, and I was able to give the responsibilities to my direct report and not work full time myself, so I could be with my daughter. So did that for a year,
Mm.
and then there was an organizational change, and I got a new boss, and the new boss was not so into this plan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's when I left,
I see.
because things got hard, and I
Mm.
said, if I'm gonna have to convince this boss, why they should be working flexibly with me, then I might as well just go get a new experience too, because I love to learn new things.
Right, right. So where did you go from there?
So then I went to Shutterstock.
Oh, okay.
And Shutterstock is one of New York City's first public tech companies, like first tech startup CE successes. They had already been public when I joined, but they'd only been public for maybe about 2 years.
Mm.
That job I found through a recruiter.
Oh.
So not networking by that point in time. And I joined them and got to have a fantastic ride. But I went back to full time, in order to take this new job.
Uh-huh.
And did that for about 2 years. And then I started my own company.
I see. What made you decide to start your own company at that point?
The same thing. I wanted a flexible schedule to be able to be with my children.
I see.
And I wanted to do the parts of work that I love, be able to pick and choose what work I do and what work I don't.
Yeah. I know that feeling.
Yeah, exactly. I can't lie. It's a pretty amazing feeling.
Well, there's no reason to lie. I mean, I think that, I hear people who start their own businesses and they say, I want a flexible schedule. I want to be in charge of my time. And, it at the outset, or from the outside looking in, it always sounds like, oh, you're going to have all this freedom and flexibility. And I know you know this, and I know this, that we often work more hours and crazy hours because we're self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
But I would take that any day over working, having to get up and go to an office somewhere else. But that's me. That for other people, they prefer having a place to go.
Yeah.
It's not whether it's good or bad. It's just what's the best sort of rhythm or pattern of working that works well for you. You had 2 young children at that point, and it sounds like you had some ideas about how you could do your own thing. So what did that look like when you started your own business? What were you envisioning?
I basically I had realized a couple years prior that one of my favorite things to do was to coach people. I love having mentees in the workplace, and I loved putting together educational materials. So I had started when I was at Media Math. I developed a workshop for the product management and user research teams there. And I just was in my element. Like, I loved it so much. And I thought to myself, if I could somehow have this be my job one day, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
So when I left Shutterstock several years later, my dream was to create a coaching and consulting and training business where the workshops and the training and the creating those interactive experiences would be a really big part of it. But I knew that I couldn't go from zero to that right away, because
right.
you need some recognition and some audience to sell tickets to workshops enough to pay your rent.
Yeah.
So I started off with consulting as the primary business and some coaching and training on the side. And then I slowly, year by year, increased the amount of coaching and training that I'm doing. And I thought about what parts of the job would be most conducive to consulting or, doing in less than full-time work, which I already knew from having done that. And I said, that's what I'm going to sell. I'm going to see if I can get people to buy it. And, lo and behold, it went beyond my dreams.
Wow. And I know, what it looks like today. You have subcontractors and other people working with you, and you have clients who, have different needs and different demands on your time. So you are somewhat, even I'd say, managing certain projects, but may not be directly involved in actually doing the actual work itself sometimes, but really bringing the right people into certain projects. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I do my own coaching. So when I get coaching contracts, I'm usually the primary person doing the coaching. My team does include someone who's more of an expert in marketing, and someone who's a designer. So if somebody needs coaching in those areas, I also have someone who's focused on user research. So if they're in any of those areas, then it is them doing the coaching. But if it's product management or leadership, then it's me.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the training, I do the trainings because that's really my passion. So I'll go in and facilitate a 2-day workshop or a 4-day workshop or whatever, both public and private customized ones for clients. But then for the consulting, these days I don't usually act as the main person or the main point of contact for the consulting because that's very hands-on and it's hard to do that and do all the other stuff too.
Right. And who are your clients these days? What would you say? How would you characterize the kinds of clients who work with you?
So my clients are usually product management professionals who bring me into their organization. The organizations themselves can be any stage or age. So sometimes they're early stage startups where the team is 4 people total and I'm working with the CEO. Other times they're, enterprises like Weight Watchers where the product and engineering team is hundreds of people,
right,
and working with the chief product officer or maybe a VP of product. And the thing that really ties them together is that they come to me not because they have some role that needs to be filled, but because they are trying to get stronger at product management, and they're looking for coaches or experts who can help them level up and fill their gaps. And they come to me to do that.
Well, and I would imagine that it's helpful when you come from the outside looking in, that you can see things that they're almost too close to see, that you can help them get a picture of what they need to do when they're just immersed in it day to day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If people want to learn more about what you're doing or want to listen to your podcast, what's the best way for them to find you?
So the best way to find me is to go to my website, h2rproductscience.com, or to look for my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. The podcast is called the Product Science Podcast.
Great. And Holly, one last bit of advice. You've made a number of different transitions and you work with a variety of companies. For our listeners, if they're considering making a transition to something more satisfying or meaningful for them, what would you say is a good key piece of advice for them to think about as they're making a transition?
So the place that I always like to start is, what would your Ikigai be? Are you familiar with this term, Ikigai?
No.
So it's like, I think it's Japanese. And it is basically a term for, the place where you'll be the happiest in your career is the place where your career is the intersection between what you're good at, what people will pay you for, what you like to do, and what the world needs.
Oh, I have heard this before.
Yeah, probably you have. But it's called Ikigai. It's Ikigai.
Okay.
So whenever I'm talking to people who are like, I'm not so happy, I want to figure out, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? Should I switch to a different, discipline?
Yeah.
I always start with like, let's think about these things. Like where do you fall in all of this? And how do we make that come out in the way you tell your story?
I love that. That's great. We'll put that a reference to that in the show notes too.
Great.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Holly, thank you so much. This has been great. I love hearing about your journey and all the different transitions you've made and the way you made decisions and stepped into things and tried things. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much, Tammy. I'm really happy to come and share. And if any of your listeners want to talk about like transitioning into tech in particular or product management, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm so passionate about helping people make those moves.
Thank you. I think some of them might.
Good. I hope so. Thank you so much for giving me the space and time to talk and share my failure stories.
Thank you for sharing it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Holly Hester Reilly. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's conversation, you can find them on my blog page of my website at tammygulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 092. Are you thinking about what your next professional move might be? Perhaps there was a thought or idea that was sparked by listening to today's conversation that you'd like to put into motion in your life. Or perhaps you're feeling a little stuck. Get specialized group and individualized support, insights, and accountability from a brilliant mix of professional women in a safe, non-judgmental creative space. Join one of my small hybrid mastermind coaching groups starting on a rolling basis. You can learn more at bit.ly/navigating career change. That's bit.ly/navigating career change. If you were inspired by this episode with Holly, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.